I absolutely love the cheesiest intro ever with that. Thanks to John Wilson for putting together the little audio montage for that. I want to welcome you back to All Access Live. It's been a few days in between travel. I've got another exploration in Springfield, Illinois tomorrow, heading out to play with Flock of Seagulls, and we've got shows with Starship, hopefully doing a podcast with Mickey Thomas of Starship on Saturday from the Abraham Lincoln Museum of Sound. So, before I get started with today's guest, I want to thank my sponsors at Five Star Guitars. Five Star is based in Beaverton, Oregon, which means that they have no sales tax. So if you're wanting to play guitar and you want to save some money, hit the link below, fivestarguitars.com/allaccesslive. Use the promo code of allaccess15, and you're going to save 15% off everything you see there. Plus, the deal with no sales tax means that you get to play amazing guitars at a reduced price, and you're going to support local, who has supported me. Now, if you're watching this on any other platform other than YouTube, I would request that you go to youtube.com/allaccesslive with Kevin Rankin. Hit the subscribe button and the little bell. You'll be notified about upcoming guests. You'll know whether or not I have Mickey Thomas on the show this weekend. I've got Josh Thompson from Cutting Crew next week, as well as Prairie Prince from Todd Rundgren's band and the Tubes. He's been in a million other recording projects, but none finer than my guest today. I'm really excited about this. My guest, I think I first saw about 25 years ago when I first moved to Portland. She was recognized at one of the prominent entertaining singers of the area, not having any clue at the depth of her songwriting capability. And she's a fantastic front person, but she's also a wicked drummer too. So we'll talk about all that and involvement that she has in other causes. So with no further ado, I've got Stephanie Schneiderman. How are you?
Hey.
Yeah, you didn't think I was going to call you out on your drumming? You were laughing about that. Swan Sovereign, ladies and gentlemen. My goodness, man, that's good stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
um,
know,
I'm.
I love drumming. It's just funny coming from you because you're this outstanding world class drummer. So I know yeah.
Yeah, I stand out, but it's not. I don't know about outstanding. The thing is, when I first met you, you were singing backups in Body and Soul, and
Right.
there was bigger hair. I think there was spandex involved in that, and
Oh,
that and I mentioned just prior to going live that Greg Kirkley was the one that hit me to Body and Soul, and he
yeah.
had a little crush on you, and so he had to go out and see. And at that time, too, Greg was playing with an old bandmate of yours and mine, Leah Kruger,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
and so I think that was like a foreshadowing of what was to come with you guys and Journey Martini. But
Yeah.
Greg is so adorable because for those that know him, he's so shy. He's like brutally shy on stage as a guitarist. You know, sometimes that doesn't work, but you've never been shy. Watching you in Body and Soul, you're animated and you're kind of a cheerleader mode then, which I loved. But
Yeah.
that was a long way from where Stephanie Schneiderman is at right now.
I loved Body and Soul. It was like cutting my teeth with two amazing singers, Janine and Tarshin,
Oh yeah,
and I was the newbie, in the middle, and
the young pub. Yeah.
it was good experience. Sometimes painful, but awesome experience.
Well, painful why?
I just because I was learning at such a fast. I was improving and learning. It's like I started somewhere and I was getting better, and it could be painful when you do that in front of an audience.
Yeah, that's
I wasn't even old enough to be in the bars. I think my ID was I had this fake ID that was the older sister of my boyfriend's at the time. So my ID said Jenny Burns,
oh my god.
which is actually kind of a cool stage name. And so the bouncers at these clubs would say, "So then why do you go by Stephanie Schneiderman?" And I was like, "Because Stephanie Schneiderman is my stage name."
Oh yeah, you don't want paparazzi to get a hold of
That's
the.
why.
Oh
Yeah.
my god. So you started off on the right foot. That's good. That you avoided the celebrity status and the stalkers and got into the venue. I mean, I did underage gigs too. When I grew up in Montana,
Yeah.
and I was playing bars at 16, 17. And as long as I either stayed behind the soundboard or I went outside on breaks, I was able to do that all the time.
Well, yeah.
But when you're
It,
doing this
that
kind of
that would be the other route. It's just hard during the winter or traveling. It's
yeah,
convenient. It was
Did,
easier for me to just,
were you touring then too?
We were touring just a little bit. We did a lot of up and down the West Coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when I think about those days, 16, 17, in bars full of, people in their 30s that
Yeah.
were inebriated, I probably had a different experience than you did. I would imagine as a young, pretty singer, was it just icky being around like drunk old guys in bars?
I felt kind of protected by the band, honestly. And then I remember, I remember in this place it was called Moody's, maybe. And it was just
Oh
so
yeah.
smoke. And I used to, on the breaks, I would go sit down on the floor in the bathroom and read my book.
Oh, so all right.
That's
So
rock and roll.
I love.
There are rock and roll moments from Body and Soul, but that is not one of them. But we used to play down in Eugene and Bend, and I have so many fun memories that, like, I think we never could stay in the same hotel twice
Oh
because
yeah,
we get kicked out
yeah.
every hotel. So I've probably stayed in like 30 different motels down in Bend over
You
the
know,
course.
you get kicked out, but people that don't
Not
know,
kicked out the night of, just like never welcome back.
yeah, was it because you had crowds of people after shows coming back?
It was too many big parties going on
Yeah,
in the middle. Like it was too much partying and too
yeah.
loud for other people and that kind of thing.
You got to take advantage of those experiences though when you're that age, right? I I noticed that you've got another fan here. Mike Klaus is in the chat, so he says hello,
Yes.
Stephanie. Love him, love him. I'm glad you're here, Mike, because I had a feeling you might check in on this one. And Kevin Alberga, thanks for being here. I you know, before you and I set up this time, I was privy to get the new Crossfire album that's coming out. Jenny Duos, who did the artwork on the album, connected me with it. She had done the On Llama stuff way back in the day, which was
That's
cool.
right. Isn't
Yeah,
that right? I didn't
that,
realize that.
that
Yeah.
she came up, I think, with our logo and did all our T-shirt designs, and
She's
um,
the best.
she's amazing. And I hadn't
I
seen
believe.
her in 20 years, so for her to come back around and introduce me to the new record, not only is this record, it's a phenomenal change and transformation in your stuff. I mean, I've listened to your records over the years, and like Dangerous Fruit, I loved. I wore that album out, even though I didn't have it on vinyl. I just like, if the internet could, punish me for the amount of streaming. That record, the trip hop kind of vibe that you had in there, it was ambient and cinematic and moody and sexy, and there's elements of that in the new record, but it's more mature and
Well, that's really nice.
edgier. So tell me about. Oh, and like Anthem, I love that song, my favorite tune on the record.
Oh,
And
hey.
I was hoping to play some of it here, but like as I mentioned, your attorney got a hold of me, said, "No way, not until the record comes out, because if copyright got infringed, then
You
it'd ruin
know,
the surprise."
um, speaking of like Dangerous Fruit, and then the second album that I did also with Keith Schreiner goes by Auditory Sculpture. So he
Yeah,
produced both of those albums, and he introduced me to a lot of ambient textures that I'd never really tried before. Up until then, I had been more like in traditional rock bands with drums and keys and electric guitars, and so the textures never really came from electronic bass, and all the drums were like live sounding drums in the room, and um, I think that experience with Keith transformed me. And he would talk about a lot of things like there's this one song from that album called Oxygen, and he was like he encouraged me to rewrite that chorus to the point where he's actually has writing credit on that song, because had he not said, I really think you should redo this chorus, it would be a totally different song. So he said, don't go to like the happy dominant chord that a lot of singer songwriters do. Don't go to the don't get big and shiny in the chorus. Let the instrumentation do that and stay modal, which
mm,
was an interesting concept for me. So keep the chords kind of the same progression, let it ride, and let the instrumentation just kind of drop deeper instead of going big and shiny, which is just different. It's not that it's better or worse, it's just different than what I'd tried. And
yeah.
it was a really interesting experience. And I think it changed my writing, especially on the second album we did together, which is called Rubber Teardrop. And being involved with like every note that was chosen for those 2 albums, because we worked in his little studio in his home, and being so up close and personal to the process of creating the drums for those songs made me kind of fall in love with drums in a different way, and realize that drums are everything. Drums are everything. I mean, they are.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't realize it. I mean, of course, a song exists without drums, but when you do add production, drums are everything to production, is what I mean to say. And so they make or break it, I think.
I
and
agree.
So that really kind of, what would you say?
I agree.
You concur.
I concur. Yeah, absolutely.
I believe that you do too.
But yeah, I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
When you look at production, you said you approach drums in a different way. Did you listen to references from other drummers to kind of get an idea of what sounds you wanted and a feel?
For the new album?
Well, you talked about working with Keith. You said working with him gave you a different approach to how you heard drums, and right? Is that right? Like the second?
Yeah, because I think that it's like, do you want to lift the song or do you want to ground it? And so it really changes not just the other thing that I think is interesting is a lot of the ambient textures in trip hop or electronic music. They're so much broader. They're so much, like, the bass goes so much lower. The frequency is so much lower than an acoustic or an electric bass, I think. And so it's just like this taller chunk of frequency. And so when I set out for this, the reason I'm saying all of that is the way it plays out in my new album. I first set out to make more of an acoustic kind of roots album. And I got in the studio thinking and having this vision for that, and only really having an EP together. And once I heard the songs back after just putting the initial guitar and, the scratch vocals, the scratch guitar down, listening back, I started just hearing so much more for it. And I still wanted it to be a folkier album full of those Americana, kind of informed by the instruments from the world of folk and Americana. But I also wanted everything that I feel like I learned from Keith and working with Keith, which is like blending in some of those electronic elements. I found it really hard to do. A lot of times they don't live well together because the electronic elements, if there's any rhythm involved versus just like pads and tone and blankets of texture, if there's any sort of rhythm involved, if it's drums or whatever it is like it's like stone cold beat versus like all the breathability that you have when it's just the human touch of playing something and letting it breathe and stop and pause and then continuing, this sort of like wave of speed that happens. And so it was an interesting experience to capture the humanity and fit it in with the electronic ambience. And that's not involved in every song, but a lot of the songs, like Daughters was like that for me. It's the lead off track of the album. And I recorded part of that down in Eugene with Todd Sikafus and Andy Borger, a wonderful drummer named Andy Borger. Do you know Andy?
I don't know Andy.
Oh, he's a great drummer. And anyway, and Todd is like a hero of mine. He's a producer, bass player, and he actually produced one of my favorite albums, which is by Anais Mitchell. And he also won a Tony for his work on the musical that he did with her.
Wow. Okay.
Just pretty exciting. Anyway, so Todd and Andy we were down in Eugene, and we recorded a few of the songs. And like with Daughters, the verse on that song was working just exactly right for me, but the chorus wasn't. It felt like it was like too pedestrian or something.
Okay.
Living in that world of just like the acoustic.
Yeah.
And so I totally went a different direction with it and added more electronic drums and like some delayed keyboards and some background vocals, but it still accidentally worked with the verse that we had previously cut. So it's just a lot of that on this album, like blending the worlds.
I love that you you've really focused a lot on avoiding predictability. There's nothing, even if you approach something from like an Americana folk vibe, it's not a standard 1-4-5 chorus. And you're, it's funny if folks that are watching this that may not be musical just know how it sounds to them when they come see you play. They may see the difference but not understand why. And I think you can tell that you've listened to a lot of different kinds of music, and I think that exposure is really probably what helped contribute, I would guess. But I love that go to see you play is not samey. It's not sterilized, because like a lot of songs and structure have been done over and over, but I hear
Yeah.
you approach things from a different direction. And
That's nice. Thank
right,
you very
like,
much.
even when we just before we got went live, you did a little warm up testing out the audio, and just listening to you, the way that you play and the way you sing, it blows my mind, honestly. I mean, you have a gift, and I'm not just trying to kiss your butt. I've always been a fan of your stuff, but you and that's one of the reasons that I think groups that you've been involved with are really special too. I know that McKinley and Laura and Leah, like those artists that I've seen you work with are all so unique and different, nothing predictable about anything that any of them do. And I think I'm sure that's why like Dirty Martini had so much success that you guys did, because it's the songs were huge. There was authenticity to them. You can tell a lot of vulnerability in the writing. And I do you still play any of those songs, or because I know Swan Sovereign is kind of an offshoot of Dirty Martini.
Yeah,
So when you guys,
absolutely. Well, so to remark on your comment about my songwriting, I really think that yes, it's about um, who I've listened to, but I actually think it's who I've written with
oh,
more.
okay,
And I would say that my songwriting has like deepened in complexity because of McKinley and Lara,
mm,
because I've written with them a lot. And it's just kind of opened doors, or like, that's a door I didn't consider. You learn to start opening those doors, those windows. If the song is a room, which I sort of feel like a song sort of exists, and you just have to go stand in the room long enough to feel it.
yeah,
And three songs on the album are co-writes with McKinley and Lara, actually.
really, okay. Which
And
ones are those? I didn't even
so,
notice.
when we were working as Swan Sovereign, so Dirty Martini morphed into a group that we let go of our beloved rhythm section and became our own rhythm section. So I started playing drums, McKinley's on bass, Lara Michelle's on electric guitar, and we decided right at the get go, we were going to be co-writer. Like, no matter who brought in the song, everybody's co-write
Okay,
equal co-writing ownership of the songs. And it really changed things immediately by having that ownership, because it could be a song that McKinley brought in, but I felt now like I wasn't stepping on her feet by
mm,
saying I have this idea for the bridge, or why don't we try this, and I could fully dig into the arrangements. I could fully dig in as my own, from my own artistic sensibility, because we just all gave each other that permission. And so three of the songs are songs that I brought to the group, and then we finished together. And it's Daughters, Gridline, and Low Hum.
oh, real, okay, yeah, Gridline too. That
Yeah,
you
and they're
talked about
different.
permission, right?
Yeah,
That you gave each other permission, but think about the amount of respect. And those of you that are watching have probably seen this story a million times, right? That songwriting ownership, the music and lyrics, right? The things that publishing end up paying out an artist later on. There's so much ego and pride, tied into some of that.
yeah,
That to have the respect to honor each other that way, I think is really, it says something a lot about the relationship you guys had,
yeah.
and probably in trust, right? I mean, that's a lot of
I
trust.
feel like it has, for me personally, I can't speak for them, but I have them both on a pedestal as songwriters and as humans. So I think that's helpful.
Yeah, it
Like, they're
does.
up on a high spot in my heart and brain. And so, yeah, whatever they say, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, well,
It
that is
comes
so
from
rare.
that place of like reverence.
Yeah,
Seriously.
like I think any musician has been in situations where they would give anything to have that situation, right? Where every member of the band is just equally respectful and
Yeah.
honoring each other that way. I so you mentioned as Swan Sovereign was that offshoot. Do you guys still plan to perform together? Do you have any gigs booked or?
We still do a lot of hanging together
Yeah.
and playing music together. It just we haven't done a lot of live, but we might be doing some live in the future. And actually, Tony, my husband Tony, musician Tony Furtado, and I did a live stream from our house last year during the pandemic.
Okay.
And we had guests that we featured out on the back patio as well as through our living room windows
Oh,
and playing
nice.
places in my house, like you know what I'm talking about. And it was very funny having people in the living room windows because it was very like Mr. Rogers laugh-in sort of. And we had like trumpet and accordion and pedal steel and saxophone and bass and singers and storytellers in our through our windows.
That is awesome.
31 shows. So Dirty Martini, or Swan Sovereign, I should say, was guested twice. And so
Okay.
the three of us did some stuff out in the back patio, and they came, and it was funny having them in the window because it was like the devil and the angel ears. And it was fun.
You,
It was dangerously fun.
I think if you do a lot of hanging and you decide to play music together, I would love an invitation to come and do a little live podcast viewing with
Uh,
you guys playing. I think people that haven't seen you guys would be blown away by you think about three singer songwriters together and a songwriters in the round kind of vibe, but
yeah.
it's so much more than that. And so I'm glad to know that you're still alive and kicking that way.
Yeah,
Um,
well, we recorded an EP together with Chet Leister,
oh my
and who produced it
god,
for us, and yeah, it was like redefining. It was really exciting. We wrote and um, arranged and practiced all just down in the basement of my place, of this place, and God, we spent so many hours together, and it's some of the most. I'm like most proud of the stuff that we've recorded, and we really haven't put it out that much. But you
wow,
can find it. The EP is called Valentine,
okay.
and the band is Swan Sovereign, so you can find it. It's just you have to kind of dig around.
Can they dig around on the link that I have on your website there, the Stephanie Schneiderman?
Yeah. In fact,
Okay,
if you go to my music page, there are those
okay.
two CDs that are available. Yeah, so.
That's your homework,
Um,
guys,
but
out
it was
there.
it was interesting because we recorded actually Gridline together as Swan Sovereign with me on drums, and it was just the three of us. And it's so I really took it somewhere different on the album on Crossfire. I really different. I dropped the guitar. The guitar used to do this like very and replaced it with this like keyboard
Yeah.
with the help of Matt Greca, who engineered the album, and so then Tony put this really interesting banjo um, thing on there. It kind of reminds me of like Fleetwood Mac, and it kind of pulled it in this one direction. So it's just always like following the sounds and following. It was like being creatively agile is what it felt like to me in the studio. It's exciting.
I love it. I'm probably not going to be able to get away with not having you play right now. After hearing you warm up with the guitar, I
Okay.
yeah. So
It's hard. It's in my hands, so I feel like I have to play it.
I think it's fantastic. I do want to get back to drums with you in a second. So remind me because I want to ask you about when yeah you're multitasking while you tune. When you go see a show,
Yeah.
for me as a drummer, if the drummer is worth their weight in salt or interesting to me, I can't take my eyes off them, and that's just my own thing, right? As a drummer, but for you, as a singer, songwriter, drummer, are you drawn to any particular person in the band, or are you able to absorb the whole thing?
I think because I want to be a better drummer, I'm glued to the drummer. Like you said,
Okay,
I get really close to the stage. I just like watch the drummer. But I think that's because I just like I want to be a better drummer. Or I want to grow and be better. But I mean, I'm captivated with the rest of the audience by an amazing singer songwriter. I tend to love a lot of the shoegazing.
the moody,
It's not that their strong suit is the performance. Their strong suit is just the writing.
yeah.
Where I just happen to be present while they're singing. It's not like they're not like blowing me away from the stage performance. It's more just like the song.
Yeah, Okay, so I'm gonna, and I will make a guilty announcement that, or acknowledgement that really until about 2 years ago, I never listened to lyrics. I never did
Oh,
anything, any classic songs, the most amazing songwriters. For me, it was all about melody, the hooks that were there, and so then
yeah.
I went back. It was just like, I guess turning midlife. It was the difference, and I have a different appreciation for songwriters now, and musicians. Like, there's a band that I've just been crazy about the last few years. Walking Papers out of Seattle.
Mhm.
Jeff Angel, like Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses started that band with him, and Barrett Martin from Screaming Trees, and Jefferson Angel, the singer, is this incredible songwriter. And we talk about shoegazing. Like, he's got such moody writing. It's brilliant. And the music, though, was what got me at first. The music was so haunting and captivating, and then I went back and listened to lyrics the last couple of years, and it changed everything for me. Was there anybody like that for you when you first started writing your own music that just got you and you
I
said,
mean,
okay?
I could totally name a few people that
Yeah.
I feel like still kill me. Um, Early on, I mean, it's Elliott Smith, it's Patty Griffin. Um, Recently, I've been just in love and infatuated with Christine and the Queens.
Okay.
From, do you know
I
her?
don't know.
They're out of they're French, and
Okay.
I mean, you're just gonna get blown away. I'm Yeah.
Okay. That's
Also, there's another artist named Laura Mvula
okay.
from I think she's originally from North Africa, but I might be wrong about that, but um, she's London based.
Okay.
She's lyrical and it's sort of orchestral and it's beautiful. She's got really interesting lyrics. I mean, I am all about interesting lyrics.
Yeah.
I think there was a period of time where I was of course into studying like Bob Dylan and reading Tom Waits or listening to Tom Waits and reading Charles Bukowski, and like I got
Oh.
deeper into colorful lyrics, and it's changed over the years. Of course, my writing is
Yeah.
thankfully
I
changed.
don't hear a lot of inspiration from Bukowski in your work,
No,
but pretty amazing
yeah,
author and poet. But you so the new stuff, the song that you were warming up in earlier before we went live,
hmm
is that one that you're willing to kind of
sure, yeah,
share, and not only play, but maybe tell me a little bit about the inspiration for the
okay.
song?
Yeah. So this is the title track to the album. This is called Crossfire, and it was interesting. 'Cause this was the last. Oh no, there were a couple songs that during the album I rewrote. Um, and really rewrote. This was one of the last songs I wrote for the album, and it kind of, once it came together, it kind of helped me shape the rest of the album. It like glued everything together. It made more sense because I still think in albums,
Yeah, right.
It's that way. I just do. Not that songs don't exist by themselves, but I used to joke around that someday I would just release a verse.
Yeah. I
It's just
wait.
the bridge is going to hit on Tuesday,
Yeah,
and I'm excited to share this interim solo with everybody. Just the bridge,
yeah, man, that's a way to keep people hanging. I love it.
But so this is a song that is about forgiveness, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I wrote the first line, which is, "You pass your anger like it's salt, salt across the table, a decade deep, and you can't keep straight truth from fable." And I was just like scribbling, kind of, nonsensical. And then I went back to bed. And the next day I was like, ooh, that's kind of cool. So I filled out the rest of the room.
It's a
And this is called Crossfire.
okay.
Okay. There's like big, heavy bass happening just across the street. It'll go well with the song.
Nice.
Pass your anger like it's salt, salt across the table. I take it deep and you can't keep straight truth from fable. Fire from the cross you bear. The cross you bear is a heavy heart, salted with the tears you tear. I will always come back to love you like you are. Every one of us deserves a new start. To forgive the ones who leave the biggest mark is the hardest part. You were always fighting to open a closed heart, so we couldn't tell your castles apart. And the spinning made a wind and it blew hard, blew hard. Now the walls are painted red, and your eyes match its hue. But you have the blue to cool the fire, and leave behind what they passed to you. I will always come back to love you like you are. Every one of us deserves a brand new start. To forgive the ones who leave the biggest mark is the hardest part. You were always fighting to open a closed heart, till we couldn't tell your calluses apart. And the spinning made a wind and it blew hard, blew hard.
My goodness, that is so beautiful, man. The people in the comments talking about your voice.
Okay.
I love when somebody from different part of the world that I've met through, like, say, touring with a flock of seagulls, would not expect to me to have such gifted friends with this talent. But um, the topic of forgiveness, when that song came to you and you talked about writing, um, for me, that concept has been something completely different in the last year for me. So tell me about what forgiveness means to you. Like, where did where the origin of this emotion come from?
I feel like forgiveness has a lot to do with humility because, you know, we're all capable of all things, good and bad. So if we can be honest about that with ourselves, then we can forgive ourselves and it's easier to forgive other people. It's fine.
Yeah, like the honesty part is huge. And humility. I think I think I hate to make it a gender-based thing, but I know a lot of men have a really hard time saying I'm sorry. You know, and asking for help and all those things are the stereotype, but uh, apologizing and taking ownership in parts that you really are responsible for is unfortunately like a newer concept to me. I thought I was pretty, solid with that, but
It's
um,
hard to be wrong.
yeah. I mean, in some in some respects, I felt like, yeah, I could do no wrong in times in the past, and I look at all of the times that I had a part in everything, and that forgiveness. It's harder to forgive myself at that point, but um, being able to go back to those people that I need to offer forgiveness to has been something that's been a goal of mine a lot during the pandemic. There was
Yeah.
time to slow down and reflect on it.
Oh, yeah.
I yeah when
I think it helps me I mean, I hate to judge anybody. And if I ever feel that way, I try to think about times I've probably felt or done or seemed the same way. So helps me not judge.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not great at always not judging, but yeah.
well, I think of those notifications are all these people like saying, "Hey, where can I buy Crossfire?" Right? So,
Oh, that's good.
isn't that what those dings are on your computer? Like, hey, Stephanie.
I don't know. I'm not looking at them
Oh
because
no, that's all
sometimes
fine. I you know
I hear them, but I'm tuning them out.
I appreciate your attentive. Oh, look at that. There's like people talking about your beautiful voice. Let's see, Kevin. Uh, this is my first time hearing your music. I'll have to check out her music. Yeah, do Kevin, get out there, check out StephanieSchneiderman.com. Let me put that caption back up because on her site there's information about all of her solo records and the collaborative records that she's done in bands. There's also information about your interests and causes. So, Voices for Silent Disasters. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Humanitarian Console series that you did and what inspired you to put that together.
So I was reading, actually, I was on tour with Dirty Martini, and I was reading an article, maybe it was like the Rolling Stones or something, about what was going on up in northern Uganda. And I had just played one of the million of, benefits we all play as musicians. And we all play so many benefits. And somebody got up and was talking about how it just takes one person to start something, just takes one person to start something new or to start a cool something towards a new cause. And I started thinking, well, why couldn't I be that person? So I started doing more research about what was happening in northern Uganda. This was a long time ago. It was 2008. And I actually brought the idea to Mercy Corps that I wanted to ask, wanted to do a house concert. I wanted 9 other musician friends to do that. And I wanted us to each raise a couple grand. This was, a few years ago. And I wanted to make it really attainable. And I wanted us to surpass the goal. And so Mercy Corps kind of focused all the efforts and kind of shared what was happening in northern Uganda. So I learned a lot more. And I learned about their programming, and I learned what they were doing with the tons of people that have been misplaced or displaced.
Yeah.
Not misplaced. And what they were doing with youth groups and youth programs and stuff. So I went to McMinimans to see if they would be interested in sponsoring the event, and we could hold all the events at public places, because so many more musicians were coming forward saying, I'd love to be part of this. I'd love to be part of this. And so it turned into this big public event. It was 10 big concerts across 3 weeks, and 37 of Portland's top musical acts were part of it. And as a big community, we raised over 70 grand.
Wow. Amazing, man.
Which, yeah. And we also raised, I think, also equally important, we raised a lot of awareness.
Which is.
And I was sponsored on a trip right before the concert series began, on a trip to Uganda.
You went.
And so I went there and I met with the community, so that it wasn't just like me rattling off information, it was me talking about the people that I met. And it was a life-changing, couple weeks. And I got to, in fact, the very first concert, if you consider that the concert series began in Uganda, I did a concert in Uganda. And it was funny because I would share story. Most people couldn't speak English, but sometimes there would be an interpreter who'd be interpreting what I was saying, or maybe a little bit about what I was singing, and people would laugh at the wrong spots. And I was like, I don't know if they're really getting
the message. Yeah, maybe your interpreter was
like
just actually
laughing, and this is fun. But it was really exciting to do the first concert there, and then to open it in Portland. And anyway, I learned a ton. I met some amazing people. It kind of, widened my mind, and it was such an honor to be part of that. I didn't mean to produce a Humanitarian Console series.
Well,
it's one of those things that had I known what was about to happen, I would have been too scared to try to pull something like that off. It just like grew on its own, and with the help of a lot of people, a wonderful team. So
I mean, that, the fact that you can get that ball rolling and be a big part of it is like any grassroots opportunity to make change. I think you're a parent now, so being able to contribute to our community as a world community and make our universe a little better than when we entered it. When you pass that kind of stuff on, when your kids recognize that that's been a priority for you and a value to you, I mean, that's the greatest gift you can pass on, right? And really thinking about what they received on their end. Sure, $70,000 is a lot of money to put towards their cause, but all the musicians that were involved, all the people that witnessed the series, and then on their end, to see that this wonderful songwriter would come over and want to do something for them, somebody that had never met them,
Well,
right,
for me, it was just, I was, um, let's see, how do I put this? I was blown away by how resilient, how incredibly organized, and how eloquent, how wonderful everybody there was, and how much there was for all of us to learn from them. And I feel like a lot of times, information about the, like, it doesn't get presented that way.
Mhm.
We could all sit down and learn a lot about what community, what culture looks like. It, just because we do it differently here, it's not necessarily better.
Yeah,
And so I
as
really
a
learned a lot, just like what all the many ways that you can live your life differently. It's interesting.
perspective, right? I mean, that's a huge thing. When you travel and actually, take in part of any culture outside your boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like that's where exponential growth happens. And, like I said, we were not going to rap about politics and that kind of thing.
Oh,
But when funny thing is, right, when you think about how egocentric and ethnocentric people are when they're just in our boundaries and they don't have the experience and the relationship with somebody else, even locally in our community. I was
mm-hmm.
really involved in homeless outreach the last several years. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I love to do is get teenagers down to talk to people in the streets
Yeah.
because they were invisible to them for the longest time. People on the streets were people that were houseless, right? And when you're 16 and you're so into whatever you're doing and what your life is all about, when you can look at someone in the eye and see that that's somebody's mom or father out there or brother or sister, somebody's child that's out there, that's down on their luck,
Mm-hmm.
whatever circumstance got them there, it's important to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Just like exposure to other cultures that are, you know, really needing a leg up from somebody else that may have it. And it puts in perspective how good we've got it here, right? I mean, you think about how, fortunate we are in so many ways. And I don't want to say lucky. I really think fortune has a lot to do with what we're all presented in opportunities, for, like Caucasian Americans, there have been more opportunities for us than a lot of people might get, right? And so I love that it was an accident for you to do it. It wasn't like you were going to go out and try and save humanitarian crisis in Uganda, but the fact that you had an idea and then expressed it and got McMenamins involved, that kind of corporation can put some real, they could put some meat behind the causes. So, um,
Yeah.
I,
It was, it was exciting. It was a long time ago, but it was really exciting.
so with those causes, I know that you've also been involved in trafficking and awareness about that, and some.
Yeah.
So
A few years ago, I started researching a lot about human trafficking, and I I interviewed about 14 different women up and down the West Coast, and heard their stories. And I also interviewed, and they're all survivors of trafficking. Yeah, along with being activists and social workers and amazing people out in the world. That's part of their history. And I also interviewed filmmakers. I read about 20 books. I watched several documentaries. I just tried to educate myself about everything, all the nuances. And I started developing a musical. And the musical tells the story. It's a love story until it's not. And it tells the story of a young, like 14-year-old girl who falls in love, kind of young love. And basically, the musical is about the intersection between the vulnerability of youth and the world of demand. And the world of demand is vast, and it includes just even our regular media. You know, we're all feeding the world of demand, and it's everywhere. And how it affects this, how sexualizing our the youth, it's like young girls, and also teaching girls that their power is in their how lusted after they are. That's where their power is. And so it's like cultural. It's like it's such a big picture, but a small story. One story of this one girl, and the musical's a little bit on hold right now just because of the pandemic. But I was um, writing with this wonderful woman, Amy Engelhart, down in she lives in LA, but she's from New York, and we were working with a book writer in New York, and so it was a lot of trips to New York to work on that. And so it's a little bit like on the side right now, but it still exists. It's just I've been focusing on the new album
Man,
and
yeah,
when
I mean,
it comes out, I'll pick that back up. But it's really dear to my heart. I've learned. I mean, I've gotten to know some amazing women and their stories. So
I've had a few friends as well that were victims of trafficking. When I say victims, I was thinking that's exactly what they strive not to be.
yeah,
They really work hard at overcoming that adversity in mental and like academic ways, and like finding careers that they can get their power in other ways. You talked about the sexualization of that that's where young women are taught their power is, but um, as they've experienced some of the worst horrors that you could possibly have, just preying on their vulnerability, for those women to come out and realize that they've got kind of two directions to go. They can be a victim forever, or they can recognize the wisdom that comes with the horrible tragedy that they've had to make things better. To educate people and
well, the thing is that the way that you're maybe talking about it makes it sound like they have a choice, and a lot of times, so there are like I mean, there's just of course a spectrum of what it might look like for anybody, and maybe there's some cases. The people that I interviewed anyway, which is what I can speak to, um, they didn't have a choice. They were young, and they were. It's not that they were like. I mean, they weren't like kidnapped. There was this grooming period,
yeah.
and so it almost seems like they had a choice, but really, when you're
Oh
15 or 16 and you're being groomed, it's not it's
no,
not a choice.
I'm
It's
talking
not
about
like
choice after they've been able
yeah,
to get free
yes.
from this. So I mean, because we all know people that have had sexual trauma or other kinds of experiences that way, that continue to um, live in
I
that
see.
shadow,
Right.
and the women, a couple friends that I've had, one in particular I think of as a business owner, and things like the pandemic were nothing compared to what she had to go through, and so she
Right.
would find every way to provide for her family and her child, and I had a guest on the show, Nefertari Plessy. She was a playmate at a young age, and became a single mom, and was she recognized that the image that she had to present for that short time to get her the notoriety and the publicity from, say, Playboy magazine was so limiting. She needed to overcome all sorts of boundaries to show
Mhm.
that she's not just a pretty face, that she's got a wonderful creative brain,
Right.
and a dedicated mom. She started a nonprofit called Single Moms Planet, and they have Single Mom of the Year awards at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and they've got a board of directors with self-made billionaire single moms, and women that have really had a rough go as single parents, but have found strength in the community, working together, and that's a huge part of it. I think advocates for, trafficking victims, getting them together in group therapy and exposure to the avenues that they have, to be able to get help, I think is so important, rather than withdrawing and realizing that, the tragedy they had is their destiny, and it doesn't have to be.
Wow. Yeah. What a
I mean,
spark that woman has. My God.
Yeah. I mean, just like the people that you interview, that you were educating yourself and finding out about those experiences, and I'm sure it tore your heart out. I mean, it had to be really difficult.
Well,
You
what's interesting for me is that I think what kept happening in every single person that I met and talked with is that I kept feeling like that could have been me. There's a lot of times when we fit in our brains like, oh, this happens to them,
right?
us, them. And every time I mean, we've all been, I think every female I know has been in a scenario where things could have gone wrong.
Yeah,
It could have been me. So it could be anybody. And that's kind of what I was wanting to create in the audience watching this musical. It's like this feeling of like, this could be me. This could be my daughter. This could be my niece, fill in the blank.
yeah,
This is all of us versus a population that doesn't, it's not in this
sure.
way.
The
That was kind of,
the invisible population again. I mean that. So while it's on hold, I'm sure that we'll see some momentum that comes from things picking back up.
yeah.
I I was gonna maybe bring some lightness to some of this because I have a couple of questions that I ask every guest, and I think if we can lighten things up a little bit,
Okay.
I love to ask about.
It's not about human trafficking.
Well, this could be, but I doubt it relates.
Oh,
I love to ask people about their guilty pleasures, like people that think they know Stephanie Schneiderman. What would they be surprised to hear about?
guilty pleasures.
Hmm. I can give
Uh,
you some examples because, like, for a while, several people in a row admitted that they watch The Bachelor. And this is the several tough men that admitted that
oh,
some people are, huge fans of ABBA, which I don't feel is a guilty pleasure at all. I
oh,
think they're
a
amazing.
huge fan of who?
ABBA, like a,
Oh, ABBA.
yeah, and not guilty at all. I think that, but that's what they said. Uh,
Okay. Let's see. I Well, when I was a kid, I we had, of course, we had a record player, and my two older sisters were really in charge of the music. So some of it hit beautifully, like Billy Joel and Joan Jett and
mm,
Pat Benatar. But then others, um, we listened a lot to like Olivia Newton-John.
oh yeah,
So I think that I like some of those that just they make me feel like I'm a kid again.
Y-
So that could be a guilty pleasure.
the
Like
Xanadu
Xanadu
record. That was my first album,
was what?
Xanadu.
Come on.
I swear to God, that's the first record I ever
Mine
bought.
was mine was broke. What was it? Broken Glasses. How come I can't remember the Billy Joel album? I have it. Broken
Yeah,
Glass. Yeah.
uh, yeah, Glass Houses.
Glass Houses.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Man, yeah, that's a great record. Full of,
Right.
I mean, hits. Not that the Xanadu record isn't, and
No,
I
Xanadu. I used to roller skate to in my
oh
basement
man,
on my
that's
roller skates.
can you roll
Hairbrushes.
can you roller skate backwards? Can
Can
you?
I roller skate backwards?
Oh
Yes.
yeah. Well, see that was always the thing, right? If you couple
Of
skate when you're a
course, I lived,
mm, mm.
lived, breathed, lived, and now they're back. I don't have roller skates anymore, but
But yeah,
I
you
lived
can.
in my roller skates. But that was back when you could just go, see ya, and be back like 8 hours later.
Yeah, the Oaks
Roller
Park.
skate.
You can still do it. You and Tony go down to Oaks Park and do some roller skating.
Well, I mean, as a kid, you could just say goodbye and like go
Oh,
be
oh,
yourself for hours
yes. But I
with
did.
no tether. There's no tether to your family. You're just gone.
Isn't that's sad that we don't still have that? But I
I
stuck.
mean, I get it from a mother's perspective because uh, we live in Northeast. It's kind of an urban spot, and yeah, it'd be crazy to say, "See you, honey."
Yeah, not anymore. Not I mean most places anymore. You can't do that. It's a different
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
But I think one of the questions I wanted to ask you was about your relationship. Tony Furtado is a very well known, amazing songwriter as well, and musician. The fact that you guys have completely different stylistic personas and your own careers, but then coming together, doing some music together too, I think is a really special thing. That again, being able to respect another artist enough to be able to honor each other and not have some kind of sort of pride barrier? How has that relationship been for you guys?
It's actually it's wonderful. And I feel really lucky about that because it's different. What we do is different. But we sit in with each other. And it's funny because when we do play, like we've been playing shows together, well, of course, throughout the whole pandemic, but also like he'll sit in with me or I'll sit with him. And we just played up in Orcas Island. And,
Sweet.
and so it's nice to add and be each other's band. But a lot of people think that we're a duo,
Right.
but we're really not. It's just we're just joining up for these shows, and it is fun. We have tried to write together, but it turned into something ridiculous and funny.
Really?
Yeah, and we couldn't take it seriously. I don't know, maybe because it's just like a private thing we each kind of do separately.
That's cool. That relationship boundary is interesting.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. And like he'll lean on me for songwriting and I'll lean on him and we'll lean on each other in different ways. Like, what do you think of this? Or, you know, it's nice. Um, I never really thought I'd be end up with a musician.
Yeah,
As a musician. I was
it's
always the one that, yeah. So
like,
but it's nice. We both understand each other's worlds and
oh yeah, that's so helpful.
it's tricky though in times like the pandemic when everything goes away for both of us. So.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point because I love to ask people about the identity crisis, the musicians that hit the pandemic when the things that they did that fulfilled them and sort of they identified with as their persona, when that gets shut down, that identity crisis took its toll on a lot of people. Having two
Well,
musicians there in the house, yeah, I would imagine stress was a little high, and like
it was high because we were just going so hard because we were doing these shows, and we not only would we hire like two guests per show, we'd have a songwriter guest and a musician guest. So the songwriter guest we'd feature out and we would play the show in our living room. The whole show is an hour long. We called it
okay,
Thursday Nights Live, and we'd start the show in our living room and then bring our cameras out to the patio to keep it safe. They were always outside, we're inside. No one's in the
okay,
same space, and somebody would be out there, just rain, shine, snow, you name it, out there singing a song, and then we'd invite them for the finale through the window, and then we'd also have like music. We'd also have like instrumentalists in the window, and then we hired them. We guaranteed everybody like good money, and the way we did this is by getting sponsorships. So we went to wineries and distilleries and coffee shops and um, even architecture firms, and they sponsored the show by paying for the musicians so that we would start the shows off in the black.
love
And
it.
we could get great musicians. I mean, we had
Wow,
amazing people. And there was this moment during our shows where I'd be standing in the hallway looking through the screen door, and just like somebody amazing, like Saida Wright, do you know who Saida is?
I don't.
Oh
What?
my,
I know. I need to like expand
so
my.
good.
I,
She used to sing background vocals for Prince, and she was kind of in Liv Warfield's camp, you know.
yeah.
Um, anyway, Saida and be like Torso and Haley Hendricks and Chris Purica and
Wow. Yeah.
Anna Tivel and Jeffrey Martin and the wonderful duo named Love Dean and I mean you name it, just a ton
That's
of people. Casey
my.
Neal, a ton of great people. And it would just be this moment where I'm in the hallway, like closing my eyes, just I couldn't believe how lucky I was. So we were really busy. We were busy building this show and trying to make it into something that
Yeah.
was actually like a venue in our house, sort of.
I
And
love it.
trying to keep the music fresh by rehearsing. And we'd even have our son join us.
Really.
Um, yeah, he would do the finale with us. So we would have these like little mini rehearsals, and he was always like distracted. We're like, look, if you're gonna be part of the band, you got to focus. You can't just play whatever you want. You have to listen and then react.
Oh, I love it.
It's like you guys, I just want a glass of chocolate milk.
Oh, that comes after. That's my
Like this is what it's like to be in a band.
that's my post gig ritual is a glass of chocolate milk. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh,
Like
really? Come
it
on,
is.
that's
Like when I was a teenager playing in those bars. I was in Montana. I'd go to the ski areas. I was playing ski resorts, and I'd it was crazy because I would do that 5 nights a week, come back home at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and then go to high
Yeah.
school. And but on the
Wow.
way back, I'd hit the 7-Eleven. I get a Nestle's quick chocolate milk and a couple of Otis Spunk Mark cookies. And that
Oh,
was
that's
my that was, and then because everybody else was drunk by this point, and I was a sober kid, and
were you the
I
driver?
what's that?
Were you the driver? The kid?
I no,
Maybe?
a lot of those guys just did their thing. They were
Yeah.
much older than me, but I got sober 9 years ago, and that became my post gig ritual again. It's like after every gig, my kids know both of my kids are musicians, and my oldest is 22, and we'd go out after his gigs, and we'd go get chocolate milk. And I think
That
that's
is so sweet.
it's a nice celebration, to
See,
wind up.
both your kids are musicians, huh?
Well, yeah, the older son is an
I remember
incredible.
meeting.
He's a drummer. You met my younger son, Nolan. He's a great singer. He was like in master
Oh,
choir, and but the older was an incredible drummer. And then he got into the hip hop world, and he's got a bunch, well, 3 records out right now,
that's
and
cool.
yeah, he's really talented. It's pretty remarkable,
Wow.
but it's fun to pass on that tradition. I love that your son at 8 wants his chocolate milk, and you tell him this is your reward. That's your payment for the gig.
That's so funny.
If you focus and you do a good job, right, you get a chocolate milk. But I I hate to put you on the spot, but I think as a real special thing when you did those shows, bringing that kind of levity, that kind of the musical like respite, this oasis of music, and this for the crazy time of the pandemic, I think was a real gift. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you'd be up for playing another song, I would love to hear another tune.
Okay, I'll play another song.
I love
Hey,
your wristband, by the way.
do you want to say hi to Liam and Tony? They're right over here.
Yeah. We're just talking about you guys. Hey, while she's playing, if you want to grab a chocolate milk and hey Tony, how you doing?
There's Liam.
Liam, how you doing?
We were watching the show on my phone.
Oh, you were?
Oh, good, right on. Yeah, I didn't see any comments about the chocolate milk, but I don't know if you heard that, Liam. That's my favorite thing to do after
So
a gig.
I don't drink chocolate milk.
Do you want to join me on this on uke? Is your uke close by?
Oh yes, hey Liam,
Or it could be a different song. I was thinking of Donna.
do you have a shaker?
You want to?
No shakers. How about tambourine?
I'm gonna play. I'll start with. This is a song that's the first cut on the album. This is called Daughters.
Oh,
I
beautiful.
think that's what I want to do, Daughters. And only 6 blocks away from where we live, it just so happens, coincidentally, that my great-grandparents moved when they first immigrated over from the Ukraine. They moved into a house just a few blocks away. So when I was pregnant with Liam, I was walking through the neighborhoods instead of running, because it was huge. And I started this song. It took a couple of years. For some reason, some songs take a little while, so this one took a little while to write. And I ended up bringing it to McKinley and Laura. We finished it together. And this is about ancestry and the roles that our ancestors play in our lives, whether we know about it or not. This is called Daughters.
I love it.
You really did get a shaker. Nice. You go down to the well to carry the water, chains to your hand, giving your daughter down, heavy on my heart down. You go down to the grave to bury the father, chains to your slave, letting your daughter down, heavy on my heart down. Who are you to be? Who are you to not be? Who are you to not be bold? It's a weighted crown for 100 years or more. You carry the light, the torch down. Ooh, ooh, ooh. You see your face in the mirror, of my heart now. It's an invisible line, it's more that you find, a thin veil tie, all that you got to pull, heavy on my heart down. Who are you to be? Who are you to not be? Who to not be bold? It's a weighted crown for 100 years or more. Carry the light, the torch down. Ooh, and they'll make you small when they try to save you from a fall, and if you behave, you still go down. Who are you to not be brave? Oh, it's a weighted crown for 100 years or more. You carry the light, the torch down. Ooh,
That is so beautiful, man. And so Liam's got a good sense for rhythm there too, and
that was
oh, that was fantastic. I have to tell you, Tony, it's really good to see you too, and Liam, it's a pleasure to meet you in person. The both of you, Steph and Tony, somebody that I held near and dear to my heart, and I know that you did too, who just spoke with such reverence for you. Tim Ellis was such a fan of both of you guys, and as I went through poking through your stuff, I found the Live at Kung Fu Bakery record that you did, and he's come up in so many of my podcasts that he's been such an influence. You talked about the influence that Laura and McKinley had been to you, and the experience you had with Body and Soul being this transformative thing. Tim made me such a much better musician, and I think human. I think as a listener and as somebody, who just watched how he just provided for his family through music. He was the first person I knew that, with 5 kids and putting them all through college and somehow managing that thing was heroic, And so when I see you guys together playing, I just can't help but think of how much he appreciated both of you guys. And so
I love that. Tim Ellis is and will always be so important to me.
yeah,
And it was a huge, huge mentor to me in so many ways. And he produced Touchdown and also Live at Kung Fu Bakery.
yeah.
And he just, he was a mentor I kept going back to even after those albums. It's just to get his perspective, because he was kind of always right.
Isn't that crazy?
Oh,
Yeah. Where did that wisdom come
what
from?
I don't know.
Yeah, he, it's funny because he always had an opinion too. Jim Walker and I talk about this a lot about Tim's opinion. But hey, Liam, I got a question for you. What's it like to have 2 rock star parents that you got to stay at home with for a year? Kind of fun, yeah. Is there music happening in your house all the time?
Sometimes.
Yeah, if it's not, I bet if it's not happening out loud, it's probably just in mom and dad's head.
There
It
was
is-
more music happening in this house during the pandemic than ever before.
It sounds like it. Yeah. I mean, like, you're stuck there. But I love the idea that people are looking through the windows and playing music. You mentioned the Mr. Rogers thing, and honestly, he's become a hero of mine the last several years, especially. Just you talk about judgment. There's no judgment from that guy
Well,
ever,
yeah.
and if I held him in regard that he's my Everest, if I wanted to get to some point, even if I hit the first base camp in that trajectory, then I'm in the right direction. So,
Who's the base camp if Mr. Rogers is the?
well, I mean, I just want each base camp is like, for me, if I get that point by the end of my life, I'll feel like I was in the right direction.
Yeah.
So I usually have a Mr. Rogers coffee cup that I drink my tea in
Really?
on the meetings. But I just
What would Mr. Rogers do? I know that's a thing.
it's always there. Yeah, I mean, I think about it a lot.
You
Well, you
know,
know what? Here's what I wanted to do. This is something completely new. I want to start with my guests. I'm going to open a fortune cookie for you. And this is going to be the Furtado Schneiderman Liam fortune cookie, whatever this
You're not going to
says.
add in bed at the end then.
Unless, well, we'll see how appropriate it is. Like, this is a family show, right? So, all right. Your fortune says, just from Tim, you have at your command the wisdom of the ages. So you get to take that with you. You can take the wisdom of the ages.
That's all it says.
In bed.
In bed. Yeah. Well,
The wisdom of the ages. That's all it says. It
You
doesn't. It
can't-
doesn't like say. It just says the wisdom of the ages. Like that's all.
no, it says you have at your command the wisdom of the ages. Yeah. So Tim bestowed that upon you, right? So from this point forward, Liam, whatever mom and dad say, they have the wisdom of the ages. So you have to listen to it. It comes from someplace.
It melts.
Yeah. I want to thank you guys both so much. I mean, your family is beautiful, and Tony, it's great to see your smiling face again. I really appreciated you lending your talents there. And Stephanie, just kudos to you for your contributions, not only musically, but I did mention that oftentimes in my show I'll ask people about legacy. What when you look back in your days, when it's the end of times for you, and you think about what you would like to be remembered by, what would you say that would be, Steph?
I want to have been brave, and I always want to tell the truth. So that's it. Truth and
Okay.
courage.
That's bravery. I love it. Good values to have. You want to throw those in there, Tony?
Those are pretty good.
Okay. Can't beat that. Yeah.
Can't find a base camp answer if that's the evidence.
Yeah. It's just come on, man. Shoot for the stars. Yeah. Folks, if you had not yet heard Stephanie's stuff, when Crossfire comes out, I definitely recommend getting it. Do you have a release date for it?
I do, and I haven't announced it yet, so I'll announce it
Oh.
like right here.
World premiere. You hear it first. Let's hear Crossfire.
It's going to be out on September 7th.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, 60 days from now.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, so folks, you've got 60 days to get out there and hear all of Stephanie's previous recordings, so that you can hear.
I think I'm going to be releasing a couple singles, like one in July, maybe one in August. I have to figure out that.
This is July now, so maybe that was.
I know. So one yesterday is what I'm thinking. Yesterday.
I think right now, you had Daughters with guest appearances, today, so, which is such a great song, great opener, really. I mean, that album opener, you grab them right off the bat.
Well, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah. So
It's
singles.
So much fun and an honor to be on your show. I really appreciate you having me.
I'm grateful to have you. I'm glad you're feeling better, and can't wait to see you guys play live. Thank you guys for watching in the chat. I'll be back next Wednesday with Josh Thompson from Wang Chung and Cutting Crew and his new solo record. I'm hoping to have Mickey Thomas on Saturday from the Abraham Lincoln Museum of Sound in Springfield, Illinois. And then next Friday, we'll have Prairie Prince from Todd Rundgren's band and the Tubes. So if you've not yet done so, please hit the subscribe button below on YouTube and ring the bell. Go back and look at archives. And if you caught this late, you can go back to accesskevin.com and you can see this interview from the beginning, along with 100 or 201 others. So thanks again for being here. And Steph, thank you so much. Both of you guys have a beautiful week and continue to be brave.